You begin in 1946, just a few months after the end of the Second World War, when a boy is born to a widowed mother in Hope. The house is plain, wood creaking under every step, yet there is a sense of resilience inside its walls. His father, a traveling salesman, never lives to see him. His life is cut short in a car accident. Before the boy even takes his first breath, that absence lingers like a shadow, shaping the household in subtle, lasting ways. His mother, Virginia, is both tender and restless. She leaves him for periods of time in the care of grandparents while she trains as a nurse in Louisiana. You can almost feel the boy's small hand clutching his grandmother's apron, the smell of cornbread filling the kitchen, and the faint sound of church hymns floating from a nearby radio. Discipline comes with warmth here, but also with firmness. He grows in a household where faith, hard work, and a touch of stubborn pride are instilled every day. By the time he is a little older, his mother remarries. The new stepfather, Roger Clinton, brings a complicated presence into the home. The boy, still learning the world, experiences both moments of kindness and the strain of an unstable household. There are arguments, raised voices, and nights when silence feels heavier than words. Historians still argue whether these turbulent domestic scenes shaped his remarkable ability to read people, to sense the smallest changes in mood, and to calm storms before they erupted. Yet even amid tension, there is joy. The boy learns to play the saxophone, and you can almost hear the first hesitant notes filling the modest living room. That instrument becomes his companion, a source of comfort and escape. It's not just a pastime, it plants seeds of rhythm and performance that will one day serve him in the cadence of speeches and the presence he carries in a crowd. A quirky little detail from these early years. He loved to sit by the radio and mimic announcers, testing his voice against theirs, practicing without knowing he was rehearsing for a future filled with microphones and cameras. School is where his natural charm starts to shine. Teachers notice his eagerness, the way he leans forward with questions, and the unusual confidence in his answers. He doesn't simply learn, he connects. You see him at the front of a class, reading aloud with clarity that makes others turn their heads. He is the boy who can stand at a podium without trembling, who somehow makes classmates feel both noticed and included. In Hope, the local library is a sanctuary. You picture him slipping through its doors, the smell of old paper greeting him, his fingers brushing spines of books heavier than his small hands can hold. He devours biographies of presidents, stories of history, and lessons in leadership long before he understands their weight. It is here that he first imagines himself not just as a participant in life but as a shaper of it. By the time he reaches his teenage years, he carries himself with a poise that surprises adults. One summer afternoon, he finds himself in the presence of President John F. Kennedy, shaking his hand during a visit to Washington as part of the Boys Nation program. That handshake, captured in a photograph, will later be remembered as a spark of destiny. But for now, in his childhood town, he is simply a boy walking the dirt roads of Arkansas, unaware of how many paths will one day stretch before him. Still, he is not untouched by the difficulties of small-town life. Money is tight, tempers flare, and secrets are kept within the family. Sometimes, he hides in the music of his saxophone, letting the notes drown out the world. Other times, he finds solace in school, where his talent for words and persuasion gives him a sense of control. In these patterns of retreat and performance, you see the beginnings of the man who will later weather storms in the public eye, always balancing between private silence and public confidence. There are nights when he lies awake, the ceiling fan turning lazily above him, dreaming of places far beyond Arkansas, dreams of Washington's monuments, of great debates, of faces leaning in to listen. Yet in the morning he returns to the rhythm of hope, family chores, small-town chatter, church gatherings where everyone knows his name. It is both a comfort and a cage. And deep down he already senses he will not stay forever. As you drift with him through these years, you feel the layering of influences, the love of a strong mother, the hardship of a turbulent stepfather, the discipline of grandparents, and the encouragement of teachers. Each piece molds him in ways not immediately visible but permanently etched. This childhood in Arkansas does not seem extraordinary at first glance, but it is a crucible. From it emerges a boy who knows resilience, who learns to adapt, and who begins to believe that his voice, one day, might matter. And so, the small-town boy with a saxophone in his hands and ambition in his eyes begins to step toward a larger stage. Though for now, he is still walking barefoot across the wooden floors of a modest Arkansas home, still listening to the hum of cicadas outside his window. You leave behind the creaky wooden floors of hope and step into the bright, unfolding world of adolescence and early ambition. The boy you once watched hiding in music and books now stands taller, sharper, more aware of his surroundings. In this stage of his journey, you see the glimmer of political promise begin to take shape, though he is still only a teenager. The high school hallways in Hot Springs, Arkansas, where his family has moved, buzz with chatter and ambition of their own. Here, Bill Clinton becomes more than just another student. He becomes a leader in the making. The move to Hot Springs gives him new opportunities. The city feels more alive, with bustling bathhouses, jazz drifting through the evenings, and an energy that makes the boy feel closer to the wider world he dreams of. At Hot Springs High School, he is not just another face in the crowd. He dives into student council, debate teams, and music performances with the same enthusiasm that marked his childhood reading habits. Teachers quickly recognize something unusual: his ability to connect. He does not just argue a point in debate. He wraps it in charm, makes it sound reasonable, and invites his opponents into his orbit. There is a sense that he belongs on stage. Whether standing at a school assembly or playing his saxophone at a football halftime, he radiates confidence. You watch him moving easily between groups of classmates, athletes, scholars, musicians, all seeming to claim him as one of their own. That ease with people is not accidental. It is learned, sharpened by years of balancing the tension at home, by watching for moods, by finding the right words at the right time. One well-known fact from this period is his trip to Washington as a delegate for Boys Nation in 1963. You can almost feel the nervous excitement in his chest as he stands in the Rose Garden, lining up with other boys his age, waiting for the moment when President John F. Kennedy steps forward. That brief handshake, caught in a photograph, becomes a kind of legend, one he will later point to as the instant he felt certain of his path. Yet historians still argue whether it was truly that handshake or the steady layering of encouragement from teachers, friends, and mentors that set him firmly on the road to politics. Beyond the photo op, daily life continues. In the Hot Springs neighborhood, he mows lawns to make a little money, sweats under the Arkansas sun, and comes home to the unpredictable rhythm of his stepfather. The arguments are still there, the unpredictability of a man who drinks too much and loses his temper. The young Clinton learns to smooth things over, to protect his younger half-brother Roger, and to step into a role of responsibility before most boys his age would. It is a quieter form of leadership, but perhaps the more important one. A quirky detail from his school days. He had a knack for remembering names. Teachers, classmates, parents of classmates, he could recall them easily, weaving small details of conversations into later encounters. People felt seen by him, even at a young age. That memory would later become one of his political superpowers. But here, it is simply a teenager making others feel special. In high school, he also starts to hone his love of politics directly. You imagine him sitting in a classroom, listening closely as civics lessons unfold. He debates passionately with peers about government, rights, and the meaning of leadership. He writes speeches for student office with a flourish that others notice. In the quiet of his room, he practices aloud, holding his saxophone case like a lectern, testing his voice against the silence until it carries with ease. The year 1963 remains pivotal. After shaking Kennedy's hand, he returns to Arkansas with a new sense of purpose. You can almost feel him lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment in his mind. The president's charm, his youth, his vigor, it all leaves an impression. Clinton begins to imagine not only what it would be like to walk the halls of power, but also what it would take to get there. He graduates from high school in 1964, ranking near the top of his class. He leaves Hot Springs with both ambition and a saxophone in hand. He is accepted to Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., where the world of politics moves from imagination to reality. Before he goes, though, you see him pausing in his small Arkansas bedroom one last time, folding shirts into a suitcase, his mother watching proudly from the doorway. The sound of cicadas still fills the evening outside, a reminder of where he began, even as he prepares to step into a city buzzing with a very different kind of energy. As you drift with him toward Georgetown, you notice how each piece of his youth has prepared him for what lies ahead. The resilience shaped by family struggles, the confidence honed in classrooms and debate teams, the inspiration from that single presidential handshake. He carries all of it with him, tucked away like notes in the pockets of his suitcase, ready to be pulled out when the moment demands. And so, the small-town boy who once dreamed beneath a ceiling fan in Arkansas now heads eastward. The train ride to Washington is long, the scenery shifting from flat farmlands to the grand marble monuments of the Capitol. He presses his face to the window as the city comes into view, heart racing, ready to step onto a stage larger than anything he has ever known. You step with him now into the wide avenues of Washington, D.C., where the sound of car horns mixes with the steady beat of ambition. Georgetown University becomes his new home, a campus of red brick buildings, leafy courtyards, and lecture halls filled with voices from every corner of the world. For Bill Clinton, this is not just another step in education, it is immersion into the bloodstream of politics. At Georgetown, you watch him dive headfirst into the School of Foreign Service, studying international affairs with the same hunger he once had for biographies in the library back in Arkansas. Professors take note of his eagerness. He raises his hand in class, not to show off, but because he genuinely craves the exchange of ideas. His southern drawl stands out in the room, but it carries warmth, and soon classmates begin to gather around him. You trail him through late-night debates in the dorms, stacks of books open on the floor, cigarette smoke curling in the air. He listens as much as he talks, leaning forward with that familiar intensity, nodding at others' points before adding his own. Already he has mastered the art of making people feel heard, even when he disagrees with them. He doesn't spend all his time cloistered in books though. His saxophone remains with him, and you can almost hear the notes drifting through dormitory corridors, lightening the atmosphere after long hours of study. That mix of discipline and charm keeps him balanced. And then, as if destiny is already clearing a path, he secures internships in Washington, working under Senator J. William Fulbright of Arkansas, a man known for his intellectual rigor and strong opposition to the Vietnam War. The internship changes him. In Fulbright's office, he sees firsthand how politics can both inspire and compromise, how idealism collides with reality. He fetches papers, listens quietly in meetings, and studies the rhythm of power. Historians still argue whether this early exposure to Washington hardened his pragmatism or deepened his belief that change had to come from within the system. One quirky story from these days: despite his polished image in classrooms, Clinton worked part-time in the cafeteria, serving food to fellow students. The future president ladling out mashed potatoes is an image few would expect, yet it grounded him. He joked with classmates in line, remembered their orders, and never seemed to mind the work. It was a small reminder that his ambition coexisted with humility, at least in these younger years. The late 1960s, though, were not calm times. Outside the university, the nation is restless. Protests against the Vietnam War echo in the streets. Students march with banners, the sound of chants drifting through the capital. Clinton, while cautious, pays attention. He is sympathetic to the anti-war movement, influenced by mentors like Fulbright, but he also sees the complexity of the issue. He wants peace but recognizes that politics is rarely as simple as a chant. By the time he graduates in 1968, with honors, he has already carved out an identity as a man destined for something greater. Yet the world calls him further still. That autumn he crosses the Atlantic to study at Oxford University as a Rhodes Scholar. You imagine him stepping off the plane into England's damp air, coat pulled tight around him, suitcase heavy in his hand. The stone towers of Oxford rise like something out of a dream, their spires pointing toward centuries of tradition. Oxford life is quieter, slower, steeped in history. You wander with him through narrow cobbled streets, where bicycles outnumber cars and pubs glow with warm light on foggy evenings. Here, Clinton reads politics, philosophy, and economics. But he also joins in the debates raging among international students. The Vietnam War follows him across the ocean, and he wrestles with the question of service. Draft notices loom, and letters from home bring news of classmates fighting and dying overseas. He writes letters of his own, thoughtful, sometimes conflicted, about his views on the war and his personal struggle with the draft. Historians still argue about these letters, whether they revealed a calculated strategy to avoid service or an earnest attempt to balance conscience and duty. Whatever the truth, you feel the weight of those decisions pressing on him in the cold English nights. Oxford also offers him friendships that last a lifetime. He meets fellow students from around the world, men and women who see in him both brilliance and charm. Some nights he sits in pubs, pint glass in hand, listening as friends argue about socialism, capitalism, and the future of democracy. Other nights he plays saxophone at casual gatherings, his music bridging differences that words cannot. A little-known tidbit: Clinton often sought out quiet walks in the countryside around Oxford, escaping the intensity of debates and the looming anxiety of the draft. On these walks he thought about home, about Arkansas, about what his path might be. You can picture him pausing on a damp hillside, gazing at a distant village church, wondering if destiny was pulling him toward politics, or if he still had the freedom to choose. His time in Oxford is not only about academics, but about shaping a worldview. He absorbs perspectives from Europe, hears firsthand the criticisms of American policies, and learns to navigate cultures beyond his own. The boy who once shook Kennedy's hand is now a man broadening his understanding of what leadership requires. When his Oxford years draw to a close, he leaves with more questions than answers. Yet he also leaves with the certainty that he must return to the United States and pursue the path of public service. The old streets of Oxford fade behind him as he boards a plane, carrying in his heart the weight of choices, friendships, and debates that will echo through the rest of his life. You step now into the bustling energy of New Haven, Connecticut, where the Gothic towers of Yale University cast long shadows across manicured lawns. The air carries the mix of seriousness and ambition that only a law school can generate. As sharp minds gather to sharpen themselves further, Bill Clinton arrives here in 1970, his Oxford years behind him but still fresh in memory, ready to turn theory into the craft of law. Yale Law School is not vast in size, but it is intense. You follow him into classrooms where students sit close around professors, casebooks piled high, the Socratic method in full swing. Clinton is not always the loudest in the room, but he listens with care, absorbing arguments, then offering responses that are both thoughtful and charming. His classmates notice that he is not only smart but approachable. He carries himself with a friendliness that stands in contrast to the competitive edge of many others. And then, in one of those classrooms, you witness a moment that changes his life forever. Hillary Rodham, a young woman from Illinois, sharp-minded and unyielding, walks into the room. She commands attention not by force but by clarity, her voice steady, her reasoning precise. Clinton notices her, of course, everyone does. But what makes this encounter different is that Hillary notices him back. Their early exchanges are not the stuff of romance novels. There are debates, disagreements, long conversations about law and justice. Still, there is a spark, subtle at first, then undeniable. The story of how they meet has been told often, but you imagine it now in soft detail. A library filled with quiet rustling of papers. Clinton glancing toward Hillary as she studies his mind, rehearsing what he might say. Eventually it is Hillary who breaks the silence, walking up to him, extending a hand, and saying, "If you're going to keep looking at me, I may as well introduce myself." The ice breaks, and a partnership begins. One that will shape not only their personal lives but the course of American politics. Outside of romance, Clinton's Yale years are filled with exploration. He works on campaigns, volunteers for causes, and begins to weave connections that stretch beyond the classroom. One quirky detail: he often took friends to a local barbecue spot, a tiny piece of southern comfort tucked into New Haven, where he would talk endlessly about politics between bites of ribs. Food, for him, was always more than nourishment. It was a bridge, a way to connect. At the same time, his concern for public service deepens. He spends summers working for Senator George McGovern's presidential campaign, testing his skills in real politics, and for a legal aid program helping poor families navigate a system that often ignored them. Standing in crowded offices, listening to ordinary people explain their struggles, he feels the gap between the lofty halls of Yale and the hard realities of American life. Historians still argue whether these early experiences marked him as a genuine reformer, at heart, or as a man learning how to build the image of one. The Vietnam War still lingers over everything. Draft questions, protests, and the politics of resistance swirl even here in New Haven. Clinton continues to navigate his own complicated relationship with the draft, his letters and choices still debated decades later. What is clear, though, is that his focus has turned toward law as a tool for shaping society, not simply as a career. As his relationship with Hillary deepens, you watch them walking across the Yale campus together, their conversations flowing easily. Hillary's seriousness balances his warmth, his charm softens her edges. They study together, argue about cases, laugh at small absurdities. A small, lesser-known tidbit: they both loved walking through the local bookstore, pointing out titles to each other, dreaming of the future libraries they might one day build in their home. Clinton graduates from Yale in 1973, with Hillary finishing soon after. As he steps away from New Haven, he is not yet certain where his path will lead. But one thing is clear: Hillary will be part of it. Together, they imagine careers that might take them to Washington, to Arkansas, to places they have not yet named. The transition from law school to the wider world comes quickly. He accepts a teaching position at the University of Arkansas Law School in Fayetteville, returning home to his state with both a degree and a sense of mission. Hillary follows, a choice that surprises many of her friends, who expected her to pursue opportunities in Washington. Instead, she chooses to be with him, beginning a partnership of both heart and politics that will only grow stronger. As you leave Yale behind with them, you sense the foundation has been laid. A brilliant woman at his side, a law degree in his hand, and a restless desire to serve. The days of childhood in Arkansas and nights at Oxford feel like chapters that have prepared him for this moment. Now, standing at the threshold of a new career, he is ready to test himself in the crucible of public life. The Arkansas hills wait for his return, and with them, the next stage of his journey. You return with him now to Arkansas, where the air feels different than the damp streets of New Haven or the cool courtyards of Oxford. It is warmer, heavier, thick with cicadas in summer, and a sense of homecoming. The rolling hills and modest towns of his state welcome him back, though they also challenge him to prove himself. Bill Clinton takes a post at the University of Arkansas Law School in Fayetteville, lecturing young students who look at him with a mix of curiosity and respect. He is barely older than some of them, yet his time abroad and his Yale degree give him a stature that feels far beyond his years. In the classroom he teaches not with arrogance but with enthusiasm. You can picture him leaning casually against a desk, sleeves rolled up, explaining legal principles in a way that makes them come alive. His students respond to that blend of intellect and warmth, and some of them will later say that they always sensed he was destined for something greater than the walls of a lecture hall. Back in Fayetteville, he shares a small lived-in home with Hillary. Their relationship deepens into something practical as well as romantic. She sets up her own legal career and quickly earns a reputation as sharp, unflinching, and principled. They are a striking pair. She with her determined focus, he with his easy charm. Their evenings are often filled with discussions that wander from legal theory to political philosophy to dreams of the future. It does not take long before Clinton steps into politics directly. In 1974, barely settled into his new life, he runs for a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. You trail him as he drives through small towns, stopping at diners where the smell of coffee and fried eggs lingers, shaking hands with farmers, listening to teachers, and introducing himself to families on their porches. He speaks with a conviction that surprises many older voters. Though he loses that race narrowly, the campaign leaves a lasting impression. People remember the tall, charismatic young man with a wide smile, and they sense they will see him again. One quirky little detail from this early campaign: he had a habit of remembering not just names but small, personal details. Months after meeting someone once, he would bring up their child's name or ask about a relative's health. In small-town Arkansas, that kind of memory is not just impressive, it feels almost magical. It makes people feel valued, and it plants seeds of loyalty that will matter in future contests. Defeat does not discourage him. Instead, he turns towards state politics, and in 1976, he runs for Attorney General of Arkansas. This time, he wins, stepping into office at the age of 30. You picture him adjusting to the role, walking the corridors of the state capitol in Little Rock, carrying files under his arm, ready to argue cases that touch the lives of everyday citizens. His voice, once a tool for debate competitions and campaigns, now resonates in the halls of government. The years move quickly. In 1978, at just 32, he runs for governor of Arkansas and wins, the youngest governor in the country at the time. He walks into the governor's mansion with both excitement and the heavy weight of expectation. The mansion itself feels imposing, its stately rooms filled with history. You follow him through its wide hallways, Hillary at his side, both of them aware that they are stepping onto a stage bigger than any they have known. Governorship, however, proves to be a harsh teacher. Clinton's energy pushes him toward ambitious reforms. On education, on roads, on industries that matter deeply to Arkansas's economy. Yet not every decision is well received. His push to raise car registration fees, for example, angers rural voters. The charm that carried him into office suddenly seems to falter against the realities of governance. Historians still argue whether his first term was simply too ambitious, or whether he misjudged the delicate balance between reform and political survival. Either way, in 1980, he loses re-election. The sting is sharp. He and Hillary pack their belongings, leaving the mansion behind, returning once again to private life. The image of the boy governor, once celebrated, now feels fragile. Yet even in defeat, you sense his resilience. He jokes about it in later years, but in the quiet moments then, the loss weighed heavily. He had to face the reality that ambition alone would not be enough. Leadership required patience, timing, and a deeper connection with voters. Still, those years are not only about politics. In 1980, shortly before the election, Chelsea Clinton is born. You picture the young couple holding their baby daughter, the nursery filled with soft light, the air thick with both love and exhaustion. Parenthood reshapes them, grounding them in ways that politics never could. And so, the boy who once roamed the dirt roads of hope now stands at the edge of failure and renewal. The governor's mansion door has closed behind him, but in the distance, another door waits to open. You sense that he will not stay down for long. You feel the shift now, as Bill Clinton steps back from public defeat and begins to rebuild. The years immediately following his first term as governor are quieter in some ways, but full of preparation and subtle maneuvering. He returns to private law practice, teaching, and consulting, yet never fully steps away from politics. You can almost hear the hum of campaign offices still echoing in his mind, feel the cadence of speeches he delivered, and see the maps and charts he pores over in the evenings, planning his next move. By 1982, he senses the moment is right for a return. The Arkansas political landscape has shifted, and the lessons of his first term, both mistakes and successes, are fresh. Clinton begins to craft a strategy that balances ambition with pragmatism, charisma with careful messaging. You follow him walking through towns, greeting neighbors with the familiar warmth that earned him loyalty years before. He listens more than he speaks, letting constituents share their frustrations and dreams. That attentiveness, learned from childhood and Oxford debates alike, becomes one of his greatest tools. The campaign for governor is relentless. You picture long nights in offices lit only by desk lamps, phones ringing with volunteers, and the scent of coffee filling the air. He meets with local leaders, addresses crowded town halls, and perhaps most importantly, learns to refine the image he projects without sacrificing authenticity. Historians still argue whether this careful recalibration was more political genius or natural adaptability, but the results speak for themselves. On election night 1982, the results come in. Clinton wins, marking a historic comeback. The young politician who once tasted defeat now ascends again, this time with a deeper understanding of power and persuasion. Walking into the governor's mansion, he knows that the stakes have changed. This term is not just about ambition. It is about proving that he can govern effectively, sustain reforms, and maintain public trust. Early initiatives focus on education reform and modernizing state infrastructure. You can see him visiting classrooms, the smell of chalk and fresh paint in the air, students whispering and staring. Sensing the presence of someone who is both leader and listener, he champions programs to improve literacy, to extend school funding, and to encourage economic growth in underserved areas. His hands are literally on the pulse of the state, pressing forward with projects that touch ordinary lives. Yet challenges remain. Resistance from conservative legislators and entrenched interests tests his patience. You feel the tension in late-night strategy sessions, the soft shuffle of papers, the low murmur of advisors debating how far to push reforms. One quirky anecdote. Clinton once surprised legislators by delivering a saxophone performance during a casual fundraiser, breaking the ice and softening tensions in a way that only he could. Small gestures like this, blending personality and politics, define his approach. As his term progresses, Clinton gains national attention. Media outlets note his charisma, his articulate speeches, and his willingness to engage directly with constituents. Fellow governors, senators, and political analysts begin to take him seriously. By the late 1980s, he is no longer just the governor of Arkansas. He is emerging as a Democratic star, a young leader with the potential for national office. Alongside policy, his personal life evolves too. Hillary continues to build her own legal career while supporting his ambitions, and Chelsea grows under the watchful, loving eyes of her parents. Their household balances the pressures of political life with moments of ordinary family intimacy, reading bedtime stories, attending school events, and sharing quiet dinners. These glimpses of domesticity offer him grounding, a reprieve from the public eye that will become essential in the years to come. In this period of return to power, Clinton hones a skill that will define his political career: the ability to blend ambition with relatability. You can almost see him practicing speeches in front of mirrors, testing intonations, learning which gestures resonate, all while maintaining an air of authenticity. His comeback is more than electoral. It is a maturation, the shaping of a leader capable of balancing charm, strategy, and policy acumen. By the time the decade closes, he has laid the foundation for national attention. The successes of his second gubernatorial term, combined with his resilience, begin to draw the eye of party leaders, journalists, and voters outside Arkansas. He is no longer just a regional figure. He is a man ready to step onto the national stage, carrying lessons from early failures, small-town roots, and a profound capacity for connection. And so, the young governor walks the halls of the Arkansas State House once more, aware of every choice, every handshake, every policy, knowing that the next chapter will demand both his mind and his heart. You feel the energy shift now as Clinton sets his sights on the presidency, a goal that has been gestating quietly even during his Arkansas years. It is 1991, and the national stage beckons. The country is recovering from the end of the Cold War, and Americans are searching for a leader who feels both capable and approachable. You follow him through the whirlwind of campaign preparations, strategy meetings, polling data, and the endless logistics of building a nationwide political machine. The campaign trail is grueling. You can almost hear the engines of buses rolling down highways, the rustle of paper as volunteers distribute leaflets, the chatter of crowds gathered in gymnasiums, high school auditoriums, and community centers. Clinton speaks with the practiced cadence of someone who has studied rhetoric, but also someone who listens, pausing to nod at questions, leaning into each conversation as if he truly wants to understand. That combination of confidence and empathy becomes his signature style. You sense the meticulous attention to image and message. Clinton and his advisors work long hours to craft a narrative. It's the economy. Stupid, they remind themselves, keeping the focus on everyday concerns rather than abstract policies. He makes appearances on television, participates in debates, and walks through neighborhoods shaking hands. Quirky details emerge. He occasionally stops to play a few notes on a saxophone at local events, charming crowds and reporters alike, a reminder of his approachable humanity. Hillary, ever the steady partner, balances public duties with private planning. You can picture her in campaign offices late at night, cross-referencing speeches, analyzing opposition, and providing counsel that shapes strategy. Chelsea, now older, occasionally travels with them, absorbing lessons in resilience, public service, and poise. Historians still argue whether Clinton's partnership with Hillary is the single most stabilizing factor in his campaigns, but it is clear that together they are a formidable team, blending intellect, charm, and relentless focus. Rallies are both exhilarating and exhausting. You imagine walking alongside him as he steps onto platforms with thousands of supporters, the roar of the crowd mixing with the smell of hot asphalt and popcorn. His voice rises and falls, emphasizing policy points and personal stories, connecting economic statistics to everyday American experiences. There is a magnetic quality to his presence. People feel seen, understood, and inspired. The primaries are a test of endurance and strategy. Clinton navigates opponents, media scrutiny, and relentless questioning, honing responses, adjusting speeches, and maintaining an image that is both competent and relatable. One lesser-known detail: he keeps a small notebook with personal anecdotes and observations about communities he visits, which he later weaves into speeches to create authentic connections. By late 1992, the campaign reaches its climax. You can picture election night, the tension, the flickering screens in campaign headquarters, the nervous pacing, and the soft murmurs of aides as results trickle in. When the final tally arrives, Clinton has won. He is elected the 42nd President of the United States. The journey from Arkansas's childhood to Oxford, Yale, and back to state leadership has led to this moment, a testament to resilience, strategic acumen, and the ability to connect with people on a deeply personal level. The victory is not only political but symbolic. Clinton represents a new generation of leadership, young, energetic, and attuned to the concerns of ordinary Americans. Yet with triumph comes the immediate weight of expectation. You can almost feel the tension in the room as he accepts the news, the responsibility of leading a nation, the scrutiny of media, and the unspoken awareness that every choice he makes will now be magnified on a global stage. Even in celebration, Clinton maintains his characteristic blend of optimism and pragmatism. You can see him pausing for a moment of reflection, thinking of his mother in Arkansas, of the early years of challenge and ambition, of the mentors, teachers, and friends who shaped him. That grounding, the roots of a small-town upbringing, remain with him even as the world shifts to meet him at the White House steps. And so, the journey carries him forward. The campaign has ended, but the true work, the leadership, the negotiation, the balancing of ideals and practicalities, has only just begun. You walk with him as the nation awaits, sensing the quiet pulse of both anticipation and responsibility that will define the next 4 years. You step into the quiet tension of the Oval Office, a space both majestic and intimate, where every decision feels magnified. Bill Clinton, freshly inaugurated, surveys the room as the sunlight slants through tall windows. The leather chairs, polished wood, and the faint scent of old books and varnish create an atmosphere that is both inspiring and intimidating. You can feel the weight of history pressing in, a reminder that he now occupies a stage few ever reach, yet one where mistakes echo loudly. His first months are filled with a flurry of activity. Policy decisions, appointments, and briefings dominate the schedule. You trail him from cabinet meetings to press conferences, noting the careful tone of his voice, the precise timing of pauses, and the warmth he projects in conversation, even as he navigates complex issues, economic recession, budget deficits, and global diplomacy. There is a sense of approachable energy. People notice that he listens, asks questions, and occasionally leans forward in a gesture that seems to say, "I want to understand." One well-known achievement in these early years is the passage of the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1993, a sweeping economic package aimed at reducing the deficit while investing in growth. You imagine him sitting with advisors, charts spread across a mahogany table, calculators clicking, the low murmur of debate in the background. It is a moment of triumph, but also a test of patience, as he must balance political realities with long-term vision. Historians still argue whether this compromise fully met the needs of the era or primarily served political strategy. Outside the formal meetings, you see glimpses of his personality. He walks the hallways, greeting staff with a handshake or a joke, a quirky anecdote. He occasionally plays the saxophone in private, a reminder of personal passions that predate the presidency. These small moments humanize him, revealing the balance between public duty and private grounding. Global affairs pull him quickly into a wide orbit. You can sense the weight of decisions on trade, foreign aid, and international diplomacy. From quiet discussions about peace in Northern Ireland to tense moments during conflicts in Somalia and Haiti, Clinton navigates complex dynamics with both intellect and instinct. Each meeting, phone call, and decision is layered with consequence, requiring him to weigh human cost, political feasibility, and long-term outcomes. Domestically, challenges abound. Healthcare reform, welfare modernization, and crime legislation spark heated debates. Clinton's approach is often pragmatic, blending bold proposals with negotiation. Yet resistance from Congress and public skepticism creates constant tension. You feel the strain as he balances personal convictions with political realities, aware that missteps can ripple across the nation. Scandals begin to creep into the narrative. You sense the slow undercurrent of tension building as personal and professional boundaries blur under the relentless scrutiny of the press. The Lewinsky affair, initially hidden, becomes a shadow that will test both his resilience and the nation's capacity for forgiveness. Historians still debate how much these personal controversies affected policy outcomes versus public perception. Throughout, Hillary remains a stabilizing presence. You can almost see her advising quietly behind closed doors, preparing memos, strategizing, and offering a steadying perspective. Chelsea's growing independence provides another layer of domestic grounding, a reminder that family life continues even amid national crises. In this period, Clinton also shows remarkable adaptability. He navigates crises from natural disasters to economic slowdowns, demonstrating an ability to pivot while maintaining public confidence. Small gestures, a visit to a flood-damaged town, a heartfelt speech about shared struggles, reveal his skill in connecting policy with human emotion. And so, you follow him through the first years in the White House, sensing both accomplishment and constant pressure. The corridors echo with both triumphs and tensions, the weight of expectation balanced with personal charm. In this environment, he grows into the complexities of leadership, learning that the presidency is as much about negotiation and empathy as it is about legislation and power. You step closer now into the swirling storm of scandal and resilience, a time when the personal and political collide in ways that will define history. The mid-1990s bring intense scrutiny. As allegations surrounding President Clinton's private life surface and dominate headlines, you sense the tension in the Oval Office, the low hum of conversation among aides, and the weight of public expectation pressing from every direction. The corridors, once filled with triumphant energy, now feel charged, each decision scrutinized under a magnifying glass. The Lewinsky affair becomes a focal point of national debate. You can almost feel Clinton's private deliberations, pacing in the dim light of the residence, weighing truth against strategy, and considering the consequences of each disclosure. Even as the personal drama unfolds, governance continues. Domestic policies, foreign relations, and legislative priorities demand attention. Historians still argue whether the scandals undermined his effectiveness or strengthened his resolve to focus on policy accomplishments. Impeachment proceedings begin, and the atmosphere in Washington grows tense. You imagine the quiet anxiety of the White House staff, the endless preparation for hearings, and the weight of history pressing on every participant. Clinton's demeanor remains outwardly composed, a mixture of charm, humor, and calculated empathy, designed to reassure both supporters and critics. The resilience he has honed since childhood is tested as never before, requiring both strategic brilliance and emotional stamina. Amid the chaos, some lesser-known details emerge that hint at the human side behind the headlines. He continues to read late into the night, jotting notes for speeches and policy plans, a small ritual of grounding amid public turbulence. He occasionally steps onto the South Lawn to play a few saxophone notes, a gesture that is both private comfort and subtle reminder of his enduring personal passions. Yet even during these trials, Clinton continues to champion initiatives that define his presidency. Economic growth fueled by technological innovation, welfare reform aimed at opportunity, and crime legislation designed to balance justice with rehabilitation. The economy grows steadily, unemployment declines, and the country experiences a period of relative stability, a testament to his focus on policy despite personal distractions. Public opinion, fluctuating like the tide, offers both critique and admiration. You can almost hear the media frenzy outside the mansion, the hum of cameras, and the voices of citizens debating morality, leadership, and forgiveness. Clinton's ability to connect personally, to speak with warmth and humor, softens the harshness of political attacks and reinforces his public appeal. The impeachment trial culminates in acquittal, a moment charged with tension and relief. You feel the weight of history in the room. The Constitution tested, partisanship at a peak, and a president emerging with both criticism and renewed influence. In private, Clinton reflects on mistakes, resilience, and the capacity to recover, lessons echoing back to the formative years in Hope and the early campaigns in Arkansas. Through it all, Hillary remains an anchor, a partner navigating both public scrutiny and private strain. Their family endures, Chelsea growing into adolescence, offering a quiet reminder that life beyond the headlines continues. Together they maintain a semblance of stability, grounding the storm in personal connection. And so, this period of scandal and resilience passes, leaving a complex legacy. You walk beside him as he balances public service with private reflection, understanding that leadership is not measured only in victories but in the endurance through challenges, the ability to learn, and the skill to rise again in the eyes of a watching world. You step now into the closing years of Clinton's presidency, a time of reflection, legacy, and the softening of the frenetic pace that marked his earlier tenure. The late 1990s hum with accomplishment and lingering challenges alike. You follow him through the Oval Office and across the White House grounds, sensing both the weight of decisions made and the relief of tasks completed. Policies, crises, crimes, and controversies mingle in the air like the faint scent of polished wood and spring flowers from the rose garden. Economic prosperity defines much of this period. Unemployment falls, the stock market surges, and a budget surplus emerges, marking one of the most stable economic stretches of modern American history. Clinton meets with economists, business leaders, and lawmakers, balancing fiscal responsibility with social priorities. You imagine him poring over spreadsheets, listening intently, and occasionally breaking into an anecdote or humorous aside that lightens the intensity. Historians still argue whether the prosperity was a product of policy or global trends, but there is no denying the palpable sense of optimism in the nation. Internationally, Clinton's diplomacy shapes global affairs. From the peace process in Northern Ireland to interventions in the Balkans, you can sense the weight of decisions that balance moral responsibility with strategic considerations. Small details emerge that humanize the presidency. Quiet phone calls with foreign leaders, long walks with advisors on the South Lawn, and moments of reflection over maps sprawled on a table. These are the unseen gestures that shape the broader arc of history. Domestic initiatives continue, education reforms expand, health programs are strengthened, and technology investments position the United States for the coming digital era. You can picture him visiting schools, classrooms filled with students whose curiosity mirrors his own from decades earlier. He listens, he encourages, and he often uses humor to connect, recalling perhaps the days of Hot Springs hallways and Oxford libraries. Of course, controversies linger, and the presidency is never without friction. You feel the tension of managing both public perception and policy objectives, knowing that every action is scrutinized. Yet Clinton demonstrates an enduring skill, the ability to communicate empathy while asserting authority. Quirky moments, such as his impromptu saxophone playing on talk shows or anecdotes shared during casual gatherings, remind the public that beneath the intensity is a man shaped by years of resilience and connection. Hillary and Chelsea remain central anchors. You imagine family dinners, quiet evenings in the residence, and the small personal routines that sustain a family under the glare of public life. Their partnership, forged over decades, provides grounding in ways both visible and hidden. Clinton's reflections often return to them, to Arkansas's roots, and to the mentors and experiences that guided him from a small town to the pinnacle of national leadership. As his second term concludes in 2001, you sense a man both fulfilled and contemplative. He has navigated successes, setbacks, scandals, and triumphs, leaving a record of ambition tempered by resilience and connection. Walking through the White House corridors for the last time, you can almost feel the echoes of laughter, debates, and conversations past, the tangible residue of a life lived at full intensity. And so, the journey winds toward quiet reflection. The boy from hope, the young governor, the ambitious candidate, and the president now steps back into private life, carrying lessons, memories, and the enduring capacity to connect with people wherever he goes. You drift now with him into the soft, unhurried rhythm of life after the presidency. The whirlwind of campaigns, controversies, and governing has eased, replaced by a slower cadence where reflection dominates. You can almost hear the quiet clicks of the keys as he writes memoirs, the faint rustle of papers, and the soft hum of conversation with friends, advisors, and family. The pace allows him to look back on decades of ambition, resilience, and connection, and to consider the person behind the public persona. Clinton walks through gardens and familiar spaces, both real and remembered, pausing to notice the subtle details, the scent of flowers, the gentle curve of a pathway, the play of sunlight across a lawn. These small observations, once overlooked in the heat of office and campaign, become a source of calm and grounding. You can sense him revisiting moments from childhood in Hope, afternoons in Hot Springs, Oxford strolls, Yale study sessions, and the relentless energy of Arkansas politics, folding each memory into a broader understanding of self and purpose. Family continues to anchor him. Hillary remains a partner in both private and public endeavors, her presence steadying, guiding, and encouraging. Chelsea grows into her own path, a quiet reminder that life continues to evolve beyond the glare of public attention. Moments of laughter, casual conversations, and simple domestic rituals provide a counterpoint to the intensity that defines so much of his earlier life. These are the invisible threads that sustain him and offer perspective beyond the headlines. The broader impact of his career unfolds gradually. You sense the ways policies have shaped communities, how international efforts rippled through global relations, and how citizens remember the combination of intellect, charm, and empathy that defined his leadership. Historians still debate nuances and consequences, yet the human dimension, the ability to connect, listen, and respond, remains undeniable. Even in these calmer years, the instinct to teach, to mentor, and to contribute remains. You imagine him giving speeches with gentle humor, counseling younger leaders, and reflecting on lessons learned from missteps and triumphs alike. The weight of experience informs each interaction, but it is tempered with a warmth and openness that invites connection rather than demands attention. As evening falls, you can picture him walking slowly through a quiet room, the soft glow of lamps reflecting off polished surfaces. The world moves on, yet his life continues with purpose and thoughtfulness. There is a serenity born not from cessation of ambition but from integration of experience, a recognition of the complex, layered journey that shaped a boy from hope into a man of global influence. And as you let your thoughts drift alongside him, the images blur gently into calm reflection. A saxophone's soft note, a classroom's muted chatter, a handshake decades ago that set a course, laughter shared in a small Arkansas home. The story settles, like soft twilight folding over a landscape, leaving only warmth, continuity, and a sense of journey completed.